welcome to the Reinvention Show with your host, Carol Wayne. Today, Carol's guests are Chris Payne and Dana Corey. And in the hot seat, me. I'm also your producer, Keith Fashawn. And now, your host, Carol Wayne.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Reinvention Show, the one and only show that entertains, educates, and inspires you on your journey of reinvention. Today, our topic is reinventing relationships. Ooh, all those relationships, the business ones, the family ones, the intimate ones, the friendship ones, they all have something in common. So today is the last day of the 18th year of marriage for my best friend and I, Steve. Tomorrow we celebrate our 19th wedding anniversary, and we're off for a few days to chill and reconnect with each other. So I usually don't do a big introduction, but today I'm going to. And I'm going to tell you our 5 main areas of togetherness, why I believe our marriage works. And the first one is that we laugh. We laugh almost every day, whether it's, excuse me, a stupid YouTube video, or this morning when my husband saw me with my curlers in, and yeah, that was how we started our day, with a laugh. We also spend a lot of time together. We go skiing, we go boating, we travel together. We always have dinner together. So I think that's a really big element for the success of our marriage, is because we do have time together. We also trust each other. And you know, there's a lot of times when you could doubt, but we always have this trust that we together are going to make the right choices, and we individually are going to make the right choices. So that's really a good component for us. We also know we cannot work on a project together ever, because Steve does his one way and I do things the other way. So we discovered this when we were first married, we were first building our house. We were working on building the fence together. We literally had to start at opposite ends of the fence and meet in the middle, because it was driving me crazy the way he was doing things, and it was driving him crazy the way I was. So we just said, you know what, we'll do it this way, and it's worked for us ever since. And number 5 for us is, I know that I drive Steve crazy sometimes, and he frustrates me sometimes, but we pick our battles. In all these years we've been together, which is 21 now, we've only had 2 majors. So I think that's pretty cool. So those are what I believe are our reasons for celebrating 19 years of marriage tomorrow. Oh, and I also want to have a big shout out to our friends Dave and Catherine BC, who we met in Jamaica 19 years ago, and it's their wedding anniversary today. We kept in touch, and they're the godparents of our daughter. So happy anniversary, Dave and Catherine. Anyway, so my advice to everyone in all relationships is to take care of yourself first, know yourself, set your boundaries, and then invite people into your world. Give love, be kind, and be a friend. So there we go. There's my little take. So anyways, with that, I would like to welcome our first guest, our resident expert, Dana Corey. Welcome, Dana.
Thanks, Carol. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, Dana's passion is working with women in the area of relationship. She's been coaching women to personal and professional success for over 30 years. Dana sees relationships with others as the heart of who we are as humans. When we can be completely ourselves, authentic and deeply connected to others, we have a safe and supported place, a springboard from which to do great things in the world. So thank you, Dana, for being on our show. And tell me, first of all, how did you become a relationship coach?
I've been working with women for almost 30 years, on and off. When I was 23, I did a personal development course, and what I learned about myself is that my life really is about relationships of all sorts. And so I started to think about and live my life out of how could I affect people and what would I'm hearing an echo, sorry. How could I make their lives better, and how could they enjoy their relationships with one another for, in a more satisfying way? And then for the last 10 years, I've actually worked as a sex educator with women in particular, and teaching them how to be responsible and get more satisfaction out of their life in the bedroom, and realized that while they were having more fun, we were really working with a symptom rather than the core issue. And so that really prompted me to start my coaching practice so that we could deal with the relationship as a whole rather than just the sex part.
Right. Now, as a relationship coach, how has this impacted your own relationship?
Well, interestingly enough, I was married for 15 years the first time and experienced so many of the things that I talk to my clients about: boredom, feeling unloved and unheard, a little bit of loneliness. And when I took a stand and decided that I was done, I was never going to be in a relationship again with anybody else with somebody who wasn't going to allow me to be totally myself. And I just went out into the world with that in mind. I started dating, and with no interest in ever having a committed relationship again, I met my husband. And we are celebrating our 13th anniversary this coming month. And I really actually never believed that anybody could have a relationship like we do, which is another thing that prompts me to make a difference for other women, because I came from a place where I didn't believe that it was possible, and I lived this amazing relationship with my husband every day.
Cool. Very cool. I love hearing stories like that. So, you have a number of relationship myths that you would like to bust. Would you like to share those with us?
I would. The first myth, well, let me just say this, people in general, especially women, they spend their lives dreaming of a fabulous, wonderful, fairy tale happily ever after relationship. And then because of the expectations, there ends up being a lot of unhappiness and disappointment when it doesn't turn out exactly the way they hoped that it would. If they're single, they kind of believe that true love's going to fall out of the sky, right? Or just in the course of living. And it happens to enough of us that it makes it believe that that it should happen to all of us. And then when, women kind of look up in their 30s or 40s and they haven't found that true love, they think there's something wrong with them, and they don't know how to handle it. If they're married or in a committed relationship and it's not working out the way they thought it would, they think that there's something wrong with them. So myth number one is that true love just happens, right? Like I said, it's just going to fall out of the sky. And while some people are lucky enough to meet their perfect partner without actually spending some committed time looking for them, most of us need to create an environment and a lifestyle that's conducive to attracting the right people into their lives. So this means, for me at least, what I teach my clients is the number one most important thing is that you really need to pursue your passion. Engage in activities that light you up, that make you happy, that you are interested in, not that you're doing specifically to find a partner, right? This makes you an interesting person. It actually, people want to get to know you because you're happy. You've got your own take on the world. You really want to live a life that you enjoy. Create your own happiness, right? So that's the first thing. Second myth is to really clarify your vision, especially if you're single, right? It's hard to figure out who Mr. or Mrs. Right is for you, Ms. Right is for you, if you don't have a really clear idea of who it is that you're looking for. What are their values? What's important to them? What kinds of things do they like to do? Do they want kids? Do they not want kids? You have to be really clear about not only who it is, but what is the kind of relationship that you want. Some people, they really want to get married. Some people don't want to get married. I have clients who would like to find the perfect man, but live in two separate apartments. right? They don't want to share their living space. So if you have to get really clear about what you want and where you're going. If you don't have a destination, it's really hard to get there. Third one is to just allow yourself to have fun, right? If you're single and you're dating and you're hating dating, nobody is going to want to hang out with you. And dating doesn't mean that you're looking, that you're going to marry the guy that you're going on a date with. The whole point of going on a date is just to get to know somebody and get to know them enough to know whether you want to spend another 3 hours with them or another 3 hours with them. And whether or not you do end up going on a second or a third or a fourth date, what is the point of spending 3 hours and not having a good time? Mm-hmm. So no matter who you're meeting, if you have the attitude, I'm going to have a good time, whether this person ends up being a friend, an acquaintance, somebody I never see again, or perhaps maybe somebody that I'm going to end up hanging out with and developing a relationship with over the long haul, you should always be having fun. And the last myth, especially for single people who are dating, is be yourself. Don't pretend to be somebody that you're not. Don't try to change who you are or put on a mask or a persona, because then what happens is that person who is may have the wrong impression about you, or may fall in love with the person that you're not, and then you find yourself in a place where there's a big disconnect because they thought you were one person and actually you're not. Myth 2, we all believe that committed relationships are going to mean that we're happy. That's a myth. Once you're in, that's it. It's all done. You're happy forever. But we all know from statistics of divorce that is just not true. So one of the things that I preach about, really, it's my number one thing, is to practice relentless appreciation with your spouse or with your partner. Kind of like what you said about picking your battle. So there's no point in making mountains out of molehills. Once we've been in a relationship for a while, we tend to play something that I call the blame, shame, complain game, right? Where we usually end up on one end of the spectrum or the other. We're either the person who wants to control everything, or we're the person who's withdrawing from everything. And what happens is when we're controlling everything, we're blaming the other person for not being good enough, not doing enough, not doing it our way, right? We shame them into it. Or the complaining is you go out with your friends and you complain about your spouse. There's nothing worse than saying bad things about your spouse to other people. So I always say smile and use the two most important words in our language, which are thank you. And for any little thing that your partner does for you at any time, if you can just focus on the things that they're trying to do or the intention behind what it is that they're trying to do for you, and stop focusing so much on the negative. I also, it's really important that you prioritize couplehood. One of the things that you said was that one of the things that keeps your marriage together is that you spend a lot of time together. We hear a lot that a great relationship takes hard work. I actually don't believe that. I believe that a great relationship takes a lot of time. There's no shortcut to spending time together. And time just being silly, time reading, time walking, time going grocery shopping, just time connects you. So I believe that everybody should go on date night. That if you are in a relationship, that you need to plan a weekly date night. If you can't handle a weekly date night because of other commitments, every 2 weeks, once a month. But you have to have date night. And there's 5 rules for date night. The first one is that you have to spend a minimum of 3 hours together alone, just the two of you. Second is you have to mark these dates in your calendar, and once it's in your calendar, nothing has priority over date night, unless somebody's going to the hospital or your boss says you're fired unless you come to work. But other than that, it takes priority over everything else. Number 3 is it doesn't matter where you go as long as you're together. You can take a walk. You can have a cup of coffee. You can go to a free night at the museum if money is an issue. You know, you can also spend money and go on a date. The one thing you don't want to do is go to the movies. Don't go on a movie date for your weekly date night, because you're just going to sit next to each other and not talk to one another, which isn't really conducive. Unless you're seeing a movie that's going to create a lot of conversation, stay away from movies for date night. Third thing is the conversation during date night, you should be catching up with each other on each other's weeks, on the good stuff. Don't talk about the kids, right? That's one of the biggest problems when we get together with our spouse is we can't help but just chat about little Johnny and how cute Sue was in the sandbox today. The family, what keeps your family together, what keeps it all together, what's best for the kids is for you to connect. So connect. Talk about yourselves. And then I always put in this last rule is during date night, you should always thank your partner or be clear that you appreciate at least one thing that they did for you the last week that really made life easier. So that it's about appreciating each other. And then the third part of the myth that everything is happy things, your relationship will stay happier if your communication skills are better. Now, communication is one of the most difficult things that we deal with. We're always missing each other, right? Somebody talks, the other person takes offense or assumes the other way. So upgrade your communication skills. Take a workshop, read a book on how to speak to each other. So those are my tips or myth-busting ideas.
Very cool. You know, when you were talking about making sure that you put it in your calendar, I logged into my Google Calendar one day, and my husband had blocked off a space of time for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that my calendar wasn't public, though, but yeah. It was one of our afternoon meetings.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Dana. Now we're going to get a guy's perspective. We're going to talk to Chris Payne. Chris is coming to us from the UK today, which you will understand quickly when he opens his mouth to speak. Hey, Chris, welcome back to my show. You were on not too long ago, and we had a great chat then. So,
yes, it was a thrill to be on the call.
So Chris has worked with hundreds of individuals and couples to help them move forward in their lives, repair their relationship challenges, and more. He is trained in psychotherapy, transactional analysis, brief therapy, NLP, and much more. Chris has presented at 2 TEDx conferences, and at the second, where he was the only male presenter, he talked about the crisis of intimacy, which he notices more and more with clients when they're experiencing a greater difficulty in connecting deeply with others, preferring instead to spend more time alone or with casual friends and acquaintances, which is very intriguing. So, Chris, what's going wrong with relationships?
Well, one of the things that I certainly notice, Carol, is that people are very judgmental about themselves. They judge themselves and think they're less than perfect. In other words, they don't see the beauty in their imperfection. Because the way that we create a relationship is that I have to feel okay about me. I have to be able to look in the mirror in the morning and just think, you know, you're okay, you're fine. Then equally with my partner, I have to be able to look at her and consider that she's okay too. And if I see that she's okay and that I'm okay, what we end up with is a process in transaction analysis called I'm okay, you're okay. And as a result, we get on. So what was interesting, Carol, was you were talking before about your husband. Now, there's somehow or other between you and Steve, you have different ways of doing stuff. And you realize that there's certain things that just don't work. You have a different approach to sorting out the fence. Now, you either fight about that and you judge him and you kill him and you want to divorce him, or you say, okay, this isn't working great. Let's just work at other ends of the fence. because you honor each other's differences and you find a way to make it work. So it's about not only looking at what's going on in a relationship, but also stepping out of the relationship and looking down at it and saying, what's really going on? You know, so what's going on in my relationship? You know, the way I was talking with my partner yesterday, really, how did I contribute to that upset? How could I have done that differently? So when I'm with a partner, what's important, because at the moment I am, having been in a relationship, got married 16 years ago, I'm single again. So which is a very interesting situation for me to be in, and also the journey of the end of my relationship. But when I'm looking for a partner, I have to be looking for the people I'm looking for are people who feel okay about themselves. So I'm looking for people who are playful and engaging and are able to nod their head and really interested in what I have to say. And of course, one of the things I talked about in my TEDx talk in front of all these, mainly on 90% women, was that many of the people I've been dating simply not able to do that. They're very self-critical. They aren't particularly interested in what I have to say. They're very wary of me. And they want to talk about all the hurts that they've had in their lives, which is, you know, and so it doesn't really, and when I have a conversation, they're not very good at batting backwards and forwards and actually having a really good chitter-chatter. So it's been fascinating being around people. And I have the same with clients who have their relationships problems. They have fights in their relationships, but they're not aware that they're fighting. They're not able to step back and say, okay, I think it's him that keeps fighting all the time, or her that keeps fighting. But is that really true? And people, when I'm working with them, what they generally don't realize is that they're fighting. So they will narrate a dialogue to me they had the night before. And I'll say, well, can you see your contribution? Can you see how you fought back? And they're like, it's a revelation for them. But they don't really see it. They're thinking, no, it was just him that was fighting. I was really accepting. I said, well, when you said this, let's look at it a different way. You were actually fighting. And they go, God, I hadn't considered that. So it's interesting to work with people that they don't separate themselves and go with what's called the meta level, M-E-T-A, and look at what went on. And also they don't have, with their partners, they don't have what are called meta conversations. And we'll come on to this when we talk with Keith, which is, it's one thing to have a conversation with your partner, and which is, as Dana was talking about, which is we get together, we have a date night, we talk about what's been going on. But there's another thing, again, which I'm sure Dana will talk about, which is that you have to have conversations about conversations you've had before. So what does that mean? That means that if I had an upset with my honey bun, you know, yesterday or early on, that I can go to my partner and say, you know, that conversation we had yesterday, can we talk about that conversation? Because for some reason or other, I got really upset about something when you said that, and I don't really know what that's about, because I can't understand why I got so upset. But let's talk about that. And I didn't understand why you said this, because that felt like a criticism to me, and I want to talk about that and get things out on the table in a safe environment. And can we do that right now? So we have these kind of conversations because we need to revisit conversations where there's an upset, where our buttons are pressed, where there's certain things that my partner can say that hit me right there, and that's a real sore point, this point right here on my chest. So I can actually say, let's talk about that. And the other person says, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you were sensitive in that area of your life. You know. Anyway.
No, that's great. So how do you repair relationships that are damaged?
Well, it'll always be easy when we bring Keith in. The most important is that you have repair conversations, that you have these meta conversations. So conversation is, what did you do today? How are you? I really like the way you did this. That's a conversation. And meta conversation is talking about a conversation that we had earlier. So let's say we have an upset between us, and so somehow we get into an argument about something. Say, okay, time out. Let's just take 5 minutes and we'll time it, but I'm going to go and get a cup of tea, and we're going to calm down. And if does that seem okay with you? And the other person says yes. So let's reconvene. So let's get together. Right. Let's breathe. So let's talk about what went on before the 5 minutes. What was that about? You know, and we come from that in a playful place, which is I'm coming from, I'm okay with where I am right now, and I love you. I think you're okay, and I'm hoping that you feel okay about you and that you feel okay about me. Now, something went on 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago. Let's talk about that and just relax and see if we can stay very calm about it. Because, you know, you matter to me. You know, we've been through this for a number of years. We've been together years. This is important. This is the most important thing in our lives, which is our relationship. The children have to come second. It's us, the relationship. You know, we have, and Dana talks about this. I have to put myself first. And I put myself first by putting the relationship first as well, and say the relationship is primary. Because then I get my own needs met. And then the children, if the relationship is solid, then the children actually don't kick off as much because they realize that my partner and I are singing from the same hymn sheet.
Right.
So it's important to have this. Now, sometimes the partner doesn't want to do this. And so we can talk about this later in the call, which is sometimes we need to be very firm with our partner. I am absolutely against playing nice. I think the biggest mistake we can make in relationships is to be nice to our partners all the time. It's a recipe for disaster, because being nice means you're going to get walked all over. You need a strategy. I don't know if you've come across this, called tit for tat with forgiveness. Have you heard of this, Carol? Tit for tat with forgiveness is if my partner is rude to me, then I can say, look, that is not acceptable. You will not speak to me that way. Now, so we're clear. Great. So do we need time out? And then we can then reconvene. But I do not want you to call me names. I don't want you to call me an arsehole. Oops. You know, I don't want you to call me this. You know, I don't want you calling me those things. It's not appropriate. You will not speak to me like that. So we're going to stop right now, take a break, come back. Now, when we come back after this, we can say, right, we can forget, draw a line under the upset we had before, because I've stood my ground and as an adult human being and say, this is not acceptable. Now, when I'm speaking this way to say this behavior is not acceptable, I am not speaking down and saying this is disgraceful behavior, which is like a parent to a child saying, this isn't the way we need to be. I think this is inappropriate. I don't like it when you speak to me like this. You know, let's not do this. So as an adult, we do that. Now, the other person might want to speak like a child and say, well, you're never happy with me. We'll say, no, let's stay in adult. Let's have an adult relationship together. And let's take a break and then have a hug first, and then we'll reconvene. And then what happens is you draw a line and your partner has 5 minutes to say, yeah, I was behaving a bit like a child just then. Let's start again, have a cup of tea, and then come back as two adults. So we get out of these scripts, what are called scripts, that we end up following our parents who had big arguments, or the script that we see on television where we see the drama of how couples interact, which is to call each other names and to be like very wimpy and childlike in the way we respond to our partners. And we talk like two adults, and then what happens is we repair the conversation.
Cool. When you were talking there, I flashed back to my first marriage. Well, actually, post-first marriage, when I was having a conversation with my daughter's father. And I said something to him, and he goes, you never want to fight anymore. Like, yeah, that's why we're no longer together. So. Yeah.
Well, some people love the drama, and they actually want to fight. Now, that doesn't help. Now, yes, what can happen after a drama is that you can have really great sex. because that comes out of it. But the problem is you can create some damage, because in the drama you can say things that are inappropriate, and that can really hurt. And people can remember, I was in a relationship where one partner called me something very rude many years ago. And I remember that still, because it was so specific. And we remember these things. So it doesn't help when we do that. And we need to also to be big and as an adult and apologize. And there are some people who aren't willing to apologize, and that they have such a self-belief about themselves that they're so perfect that they're not willing to actually say, do you know what? I didn't behave very well yesterday, did I? No. Now, the other thing is behavior is context related. And it could be that in the kitchen is where the rows are, or in the bathroom when you get ready for bed, there's an upset. So behavior is based on the room and what you're doing at that moment. So it's being aware of that and saying, well, where are our arguments happening? Where are we getting upset? And it could be at meal times preparing the dinner, right? In which case, let's just change our strategy at that time. Maybe cook at other ends of the kitchen, as you were talking about with the fence. And then later, find somewhere that's warm and cozy, where the context, the environment is very nurturing, and we can have a good time. And Dana talked about this, which is when you're in a public place as well, you can't shout at the other person particularly. So you tend to behave more. So if you have a partner that does like to argue, one of the best things you can do is get them out of the house and in an environment with other people where you can have a really good time, get some food for them, and then you can actually have a discussion, because then you can have powerful discussion, important discussions, because they won't lose their temper, because they can't, because there are other people around. Whereas in the privacy of your home, they can shout as much as they like, and get away with it.
That's good. Very good. So we've got our hot seat guest.
Hi, Carol.
So thank you for being on the show as a hot seat guest today. You do a fantastic job as my producer, and I appreciate everything that you do for me, and I don't tell you that enough. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
So why don't you tell everyone why you put your hand up and said, I'll help you out, I'll be on the show today.
Oh, I thought you were going to read it. No. Well, relationships. I'll tell my story real quickly. I am twice divorced, as I like to say, and I find myself in a relationship now where a lot of the same issues of my past are coming up. So, I'm always questioning, is it this? Is it me? Is it her? Is it both of us? When I try being defensive and pulling back, something Dana was saying that I clicked with is there's the aggressor, and then there's the one that withdraws, and sometimes I don't withdraw, and it ends up even bigger fight. But I feel like if I withdraw, then I'm not being true to myself. I'm being walked on, and it's just a lot of the same issues that I've run into in my past divorces. And we've been together now for I guess almost 4 years, and we have a 2-year-old daughter. She has an 11-year-old son, and I really do love them all, and I want this to work out, but I keep finding these recurring issues coming up. So when you talked about the guests that were going to be on, I said, okay, I think I'm going to take a risk and come on with these two wonderful folks and see what they have to say.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. And I'm sure just like all the other hot seat guests, you're going to get something and it's going to go ding. It's going to change your life. So thank you. Oh,
yeah. And it's been already both Dana and Chris, some of the things they've said I've really connected with. So I'm very interested to hear, like Chris was saying, it'll be easier for him to explain some of his points when I'm on. So I'm on.
Yeah.
And just from producer's point of view, just to let you know, Dana and Chris, I have you unmuted. So if you want to chime in at any time, go right ahead.
Cool. Now, I know just from myself, when I first met Steve, I kept replaying a lot of the stuff that happened with my first marriage. And it took me a long time to realize that he is nothing like my first husband, and that I was not respecting him for who he was. And that if I, like with my first husband, if I screwed up, he would put me down. Whereas if I screwed up, which I do regularly with Steve, he's much more forgiving, and he's much more, what's the word? Encouraging. Like something that this isn't about me, but it's about you, but let me just share this. When I first met Steve, he was not I would never have imagined, because I was always attracted to the bad boys. But I took a chance, and look at us. Woohoo! Apparently, my instinct knew better than my ego. So, but when we first got together, he brought his stereo over to my place, but I didn't know how to use it. And so I said to him, I waited over a week before I said to him, I don't know how to turn this on. And I was just waiting for him to tell me how stupid I was, that I couldn't figure out how to turn it on. And when the reaction I got was, oh, here's the button, and here's how you do this, and here's how you do that, and I went, oh my God, he's a keeper. so I had to learn that nothing was going to be the same with this relationship, and I'm so grateful that nothing is the same with this relationship. So now that's enough about me. Let's talk about you. And Dana, would you like to work or have a conversation with Keith?
Sure. Yeah. So Keith, one of the things that I noticed that you said is, you've been twice divorced and you're about to get married, and the same issues come up, right? So I often say to my clients, you can change relationships, but the person who's always there is you. And the first place always to go when you see the same things cropping up in different relationships is, what is it? Why is owning and being responsible for your own stuff? Oftentimes we go forward and it looks like we're interacting with the person in front of us, but actually something they said or a way they looked or even the tone of their voice triggers not even a conscious memory, but a situation that occurred in the past. And then all of a sudden, without us even realizing it, it's as if we are driving a car forward looking in the rear view mirror. We're actually working with the past instead of what's in front of us. So when you have patterns of issues that come up in behavior, oftentimes it's because you're reacting to something that's not even happening in the moment. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I have found myself in situations where I react to something in the way that she will say something, and I almost feel like in this day and age of DVRs, I want to rewind it to see, okay, so 5 minutes after we're in this heated battle where I've actually put her in the defensive because I felt the way she said it wasn't respectful. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so did I overreact about that? Because I know, there's some things I don't want to share, but I know my parents argued a lot, and I always thought of my father as being kind of one that was dominant, and my mom would kind of eventually lay back and just let it be. And I think maybe because I never wanted to be either of those roles. I didn't want to be the aggressor, but at the same time, I didn't want to be the one that laid back and didn't allow my true self to come out when something was said. So I didn't want to be stepped on. So I think I do relate to that. At times I'll do that, to where she'll say something to me and I'll take it as disrespectful, and I'll snap back what I feel is the same level, and she's looking at me like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes we the filter that we hear things through, we're adding interpretation to the words that we hear, rather than actually just hearing the intent of the person who said it. And that's really a communication thing, is where we all only see the world through our own eyes. through our own experiences, and we actually expect that everybody sees everything the same way that we do. But the truth really is that there are many different ways to see the color blue. There are many different ways, to see any situation or to hear any words. And if we're putting our interpretation on somebody else's intent, that really can cause misunderstanding. What have you tried? How do you work it out when you aren't getting along?
It depends on my level of, and now I see myself automatically going to, we're not getting along, it's her starting it. So I'm realizing a big issue there, but it'll depend. If I feel like I'm realizing this is a level of, I'll look at it and say, okay, if I just smile and let this go, I do know that eventually things will calm down, they'll be okay. But so I guess my threshold is, okay, so where am I saying to myself, okay, I'm being stepped on here and I need to be aggressive back, and it will continue to escalate, and eventually she'll say, I don't want to argue anymore, we're always arguing, and then she becomes silent. Mm-hmm. On the other level, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so I guess there's a level of, I'm not being stepped on as much, so I'll just put it aside. And then I'll be thinking about it for the next, either way, I'm thinking about it for the next hour, analyzing everything we've talked about, thinking to myself, okay, so was I aggressive and shouldn't have been, or, where was I with this? And I try to be as honest with myself as I possibly can in my own head. And it affects my mood for a while. And sometimes I'll go back and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this from that point of view. And other times I keep in my own head going, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but she shouldn't have done that. So it will continue to escalate in my own head even after we've chosen to stop arguing about it.
Yeah. There's two thoughts that I actually have about what you said. One is, I love what Christopher says about meta conversation and the idea that you can talk about a conversation, have a conversation about a conversation. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I find in my marriage is we're kind of like Carol. We fight very rarely, but when we do have disagreements, and we've only had 2 or 3 in the times that real fights, but we disagree about things, and that when we do, and we can't come to an agreement where we both feel safe and happy, we stop talking, and we kind of take what we call a timeout or a breather. I'll go for a walk or go to another part of the house, and when we're calm, sometimes we'll try to have a conversation again an hour later and we're still upset. So then we stop. And sometimes we have to wait a couple days before, and we'll just drop the topic and go on to go on to whatever's happening in the moment. But then we come back when we finally can stay calm and talk about the actual conversation that irritated us. When we aren't upset, when we're not attached, right? And the second thing that I wanted to say about what you were talking about is, so many of us know in our heads that we can't change somebody else, right? Everybody tells you can't change anybody else, you have no control over anybody else. But when it comes to our heart and in the moment, it's really hard not to go, well, it's your fault, and if you only did it this way, if you only said this, right? And that's totally natural. Everybody feels that way. But the real truth is, the only person you have control over is you. The only person I have control over is me. My actions, my words, my behavior. And when I start to work on the issues that are going on for me, or why something triggers me, right? Because it's always, when you're finding yourself combative, there's a trigger. It usually has nothing to do with her. It mostly has to do with something that triggered you or something that triggered me. And when you start to work with your own stuff, it's like throwing a pebble into a still pond. It creates ripples, and it affects the shore. And so while you're working on yourself, and you can't directly change her, when you work on yourself, the person that you're in relationship with has to interact with you differently, because you're being different.
Mm.
And everything starts to shift.
Cool. Well, thank you. Now let's see what Christopher's thoughts are.
Hi there, Keith. Thanks so much for sharing so much on this call. It's fantastic. I think it says a lot about you as an individual that you are prepared to put yourself on the spot like this. And that gives you a terrific amount of hope that you're moving in the direction of resolving this. So this is a question I have for you. First is, how okay, if you were just relaxed and just generally just sitting on your own, how okay do you feel about yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 0 is, God, I can't stand looking at myself in the mirror, I don't like myself at all, and 10 is, you're able to look in the mirror and go, wow, you're gorgeous, what a hunk, you know. And also that I'm a lovely person, as it were, and I'm okay as I am.
Right. It depends on the day, but I would say a range would be probably an average of 7 or 8.
7 to 8. Great. Okay. And I'm guessing that sometimes it's less than that. So there's sometimes when you are hard on yourself.
That's correct.
So one thing that I would recommend that you do is that you plot your level of okayness. So like, if you feel like an 8 now, what would it take for you to feel that you are a 9 out of 10?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting when I'm every Monday morning when I'm producing Carol's show, I feel like a 10 because I'm in my element. I'm doing what I love to do. I'm doing what I know I'm doing well. When I'm at work, my other, my full-time job as a radio host, usually I'm feeling like a 9. When I'm by myself, as you put it originally, there'll be times I'm automatically questioning decisions I made. Should I have bought that? Should I have eaten that? And it's been amplified even over the past almost week because my family, my fiance, her son, and our daughter went to another island, and they're visiting family. So it's been interesting for the first time in quite a few years to be just in my head alone, and I'm realizing how hard I can be on myself. So I don't know if there's that balance where I'm trying to not be hard on myself, but so I guess my question to you is, how hard should I be on myself during that honesty?
Well, I think it's about, Keith, being honest. Now, here's what I rate. This is my rating for you. I think you're a 10 all the time. Because we're all 10. And what happens is we're in a culture which is blaming, and this is a sweeping statement, but my sense is that the self-help literature out there is very critical, subtly critical, because the thing is there's something wrong with you and this book is going to fix you, as it were. And my take is there's nothing wrong with you. You are perfect as you are. Now, here's the thing. You talked about, I pick out something you said. You said, should I have bought that or should I have eaten that? Here's the thing. I know this. If I buy rubbish, as it were, junky stuff, and put it in the house, what happens is I eat it. Now, I just don't eat one potato chip if I have them. I eat the lot. Mm-hmm. No matter what. Now, that's if I haven't eaten for a year potato chips. I will also, if I'm given, there's a small number of chips, of potato chips, what you call them, French fries, I will eat the lot. Now, I could be very critical. It's like, I have no self-discipline. Well, the reality is, do you know the analogy of the rider and elephant? Have you come across this?
No.
Okay, so here's the thing. The entity which is Keith, is the self, the bit that's the self of you, is 4% of your brain capacity, which is in the prefrontal cortex. The cortex is 4%. Right at the front here is the prefrontal cortex. And that's where you have a sense of self, and you also make decisions for the future. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So the 4% says, today, I am going to eat very healthily, and I'm going to make sure I do 2 hours on my planning for my next radio show, or whatever it's going to be. Well, the 96% is the elephant, which is the reptile part of our brain and the mammal part of our brain. Yeah? Okay. Because those are the primitive parts of our brain that we've evolved from. So when you are riding on the back of an elephant, if you can generally, the little boy on the back, going down the roads in India, in general, can generally use his heels and hit with a stick to get the elephant to go the way that he wants. That makes sense?
Yes.
Here's the thing. If the elephant is hungry and there is distraction either side, like food or an elephant of the complementary gender, and he hasn't had some fun for a while, there is nothing that the little boy on the back of the elephant can do to direct the elephant. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, the culture that we have is that the little boy, is just you, judges himself for not being able to control himself. It's like, I've done it again. I've made this mistake. I said I was going to do this. I've said I'm only going to spend this time online, and I've gone and done this instead. I've said I'm going to do half an hour online. I've done 3 hours. That's normal. So the key is to step back and spend time each day and think, what are these voices saying in my head? Like, I shouldn't have done this and I shouldn't have done that. And is that the elephant that's doing that? Because the elephant takes over. The 4% is no control. The only way that I can eat sensibly is just not have any rubbish in the house. If I have 3 packets of crisps for guests only when they come in next week, I'll eat them before they come. And it's not about willpower. There's nothing I can do to stop me, because in that moment, I want those crisps, and there's nothing I'm going to do, and I will argue for that. But there's no point criticizing myself. So it's the same with you. So what I want you to do is to find ways to get to a 10 and realize that we are run by scripts and run by that primitive part of our brain that wants to eat everything, wants to have sex with everything, and all the rest that we do, because that's what we are. We're in fight or flight mode. So get to a 10. Now, your partner, you'll see times when she's not at a 10. So if you're aware, I wonder what level she's at now, you will start to support her and say the sweet things that, like Dana and Carol are talking about, which is we need to appreciate our partners and say, you are wonderful. So if she overeats in some form or other, then it's like, it's wonderful, it's okay. Let's just look at changing behavior. So we get to this sense of being okay. Now, when you're okay with you and she's okay with you and she feels okay about herself, everything happens. Now, when that isn't happening, what happens is there's something called the drama triangle. Now, the drama triangle is a triangle. So it's like this, and one point is called the persecutor. So it's the times when you shouldn't have done that yesterday, and you should have cleaned up, thrown out the garbage by now. It's totally unacceptable what you've done. So that's persecuting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now that comes from you not being okay with me, because if you and I had a discussion this morning, Keith, to take out the garbage, and then you didn't do it, well, you just didn't do it. It's like, oh, you didn't do it. So from an adult perspective, say, well, that's interesting. You've done that repeatedly. Let's see if we can do it different, because it's obviously not working. But if I judge you because you're not okay, Keith, this is your problem, then we create what's called a drama. So if I'm persecuting you, which is not appropriate, it's not acceptable, but to do that, then you have 2 options, which are the other 2 corners on the triangle. One is you become a victim, which is, you're right, I'm hopeless, to your sweetheart, which is not is useful. So you go to a victim, or you persecute back, yes? Mm-hmm. Which is, who do you think you are? So you then switch it round and you start to persecute her, and she might go into a victim mode, yeah? So she might become the victim, saying, "You're right, Keith, I'm a horrible person, and all I ever do is find fault with you," or whatever. And then what you can then do is switch to the third point on the triangle, which is called the rescuer, which is, "Don't worry, you know, I'm here for you, honey. You're all right, you know. I'll sort you out. I'll come to the rescue. I'm your knight in shining armor. I'm gonna make everything all right." Now, all those, you end up spinning between the persecutor putting the other person down, playing the victim, which is, you know, "You're right, I'm a bad individual," or rescue, which is, "I'll sort things out." Now, all those come out of you not being okay with you, or you not feeling okay about the other person, them not feeling okay about themselves. The moment that if you can realize that and thinking, okay, we're creating a drama here, what's going on? I'm not feeling okay about myself, or she's not feeling okay about myself. And if you can see the dynamics of what's going on, you can go, aha, this is what's going on. And the moment you see the truth of what's going on, you step off the triangle. It's like, instead of going on the roundabout, round and round this triangle, you step off and go, let's not play that game, because it's a game. It's a dramatic game, which is the basis of all TV and film, because it requires drama. But the reality is, what we want to do is get out of the drama, which is why Dana's so right about taking the time out. You have to have the date nights, because in the date nights, you don't have drama. You get on. And when we go out on dates, I'm okay with me, and you're okay with me, and the partner feels okay. And everything works out, and you just have a blast. So what those do, and why Dana's so on track with this, is those are anchor points for the relationship. They anchor the relationship, go, right, this is why we are in together. This is why we're getting married. This is why we're still together after 4 years. And then what happens is, because you have those anchor points, when you then go back into the kitchen at home and somebody says something, you're able to go, hang on a minute, we've gone back into drama again. And you have that split second where you can go, I don't need to respond to that. I don't need to react. I can just go, okay. Now, when the partner, if your partner does say, the problem about you is, Keith, you're this, you then, I would recommend, is you find the hidden reasonableness in their unreasonable comment, which is, you never do anything around this house. Yeah, something like that, or whatever it is that your partner might say. And it'd be very easy to say, never. I am always doing something around the house, which is drama. The way to diffuse it is to say, you know, you're right. One thing I did this morning is I didn't do this. I didn't clear this away. I didn't remember to pack the sandwiches or whatever it is. You're right. Thank you for reminding me. Let's see what we can do to fix that. Because there's no point arguing on semantics on the wordage. The other person is using always and never language because they're being dramatic. And there's no point treating them literally. All you can do is go with them and find something truthful in what they said, and that diffuses the upset. Now, I've thrown a lot at you there. Was that helpful in any way?
Oh, very much so. Oh, I'm going to be watching this replay back, but I was able to connect with so many things you said when you were talking about the triangle, the 3 points. I was hoping one of the points was positive and good, and I went, okay, so the triangle's not good in any way. But like you said, you step away from that triangle, and I can relate 2 times because I make mistakes, and I tend to be the one that, you know, takes the crap for making the mistake. And there have been times I've said, you're right, I'm sorry, and it won't happen again, or I'll do my best to not happen again, and we turn around, go our own way, and everything's great. There are times that, just like you said, when she says, you know, you never do this, you never do that, and I start pointing out everything I've done. Just today I did this, just yesterday I did that, you know, or she'll blame me for something I did 3 weeks ago, and I haven't done it since. So, you know, I'll come back and say, okay, so have I done it since? So I can understand all the different levels you're talking about and relate, and I thank you.
And the truth, and brilliant you see those, Keith. And the thing is, we're never going to be sorted. I mean, Carol and Dana have referred to this, which is, there's no way you're never going to react at some point. You will always find a trigger point. But the thing is, as soon as you become aware of this thing called the I'm okay model, the drama triangle, realizing that as the horse and rider, and then realizing that you're okay, and realizing that sometimes when you say, ouch, we go into victim mode, suddenly it's like the muddy waters start to become clear. And this is the thing, Keith, I want to say this. Life is like a stack of dominoes.
Very, very great points. Relationships are very dynamic. They're always changing. And as Dana and Chris have both said, as soon as you change one part, the other parts change. They can't stay the same if you change something. So that's good to know. But I always ask my guests, do you have a giveaway for the viewers?
I would like to offer your viewers and listeners a free Create an Amazing Relationship coaching session. It's 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how it goes, and they can just go to my website, which is the modernrelationshipexpert.com, and click on Learn More, fill out the questionnaire, put in the comments that they were a listener of the Reinvention show, and I'll be in touch and we'll schedule a time together.
Awesome, thanks, Dana. And Chris?
Well, equally, I think one good takeaway that I would say is there is hope for your relationship. Whatever pain that you are in right now, I'm telling you, there is a way forward, and just a few simple changes, you will get extraordinary results, far more than you would expect. And if anybody would like a copy of I've written some articles on PDFs on the drama triangle and the I'm okay model. Just drop me a line. I'm at chris@christopherjohnpayne.com. I don't do relationship work. Dana is the relationship expert and has far more experience on this than I have. I spend most of my time supporting people like relationships coach and general coaches, trainers, consultants to package what they know into products. So, but if anybody wants to drop me a line with a question, I'm here for you. But Dana's really your person, your go-to person on the relationship side.
Awesome. So thanks, Chris. And
Carol, I'd like to offer something up too. I'd like to offer free 30 minutes if anybody wants to come on with me and try to fix my head. No, I'm totally kidding. No, what I would actually like to offer, every week I produce your show, and you're not the only show I produce. This is for Hangouts that are not easy. So I would like to offer, and I'll off air let you know how they can get in touch with me. You can put it on your website. But if anybody wants to have a free 30-minute consultation with me where I can explain how, as a producer, I can make a Hangout work for your business, then I can work that out.
Awesome. And my show has been so much easier now that I have a producer, now that I'm not trying to do everything myself. And I could never have had multiple guests on the same show if I didn't have Keith. So thank you. Get in touch with him. And just don't make him too busy because I still need him.
You come first, Carol. You come first.
So anyways,
Wonderful.
on next week's show, we have resident expert Victoria Reynolds, and we're talking about reinventing your beliefs. Be sure to go to thereinventionshow.com and sign up to receive the gifts. So until next time, bye now.